Welcome to the BFIT Blueprint podcast. We are your hosts, Cody Israel and Brad Durham. For all you BFIT members and beyond, this is where we break down the blueprint of building a healthier, stronger you. In every episode, we share actionable tips, expert advice, and real stories to inspire you to level up your mind, body, and lifestyle. Whether you are just taking your first step or pushing for the next breakthrough, we've got the tools to get you there.
What is up, BFIT? Welcome back to a new episode and a new season of the BFIT Blueprint here with my beautiful wife, Jade. All right, I am your host, Cody Israel, and this will be season 1 of episode 3 coming to you in the first week of January. We are currently recording this on the 23rd of December, 2025. It is a beautiful sunny day out, kind of feels like spring. So I'm sure here in a week when this releases, we're all going to be sick and having struggle with the flu. First thing we're going to talk about today. So we put out a poll on Instagram. If you didn't see that, please keep an eye out on our BFIT CrossFit Instagram for questions like this on our story. We put a story out there with questions, kind of like a Q&A for the podcast, just so we can kind of get back some questions from you guys, topics that you guys want us to talk about, that you want to hear about. And I kind of compiled some questions from clients that I've had questions from over the years, and just kind of topics that tend to make their way back into the conversation, and then with the same client, and then just occurring from client to client. So it's a common theme that people want to talk about. So we're going to start off with training a little bit and with progressive overload. And what is progressive overload and how can you achieve it? Well, progressive overload, people think of it as just getting stronger over time, which that is progressive overload. Yes, if you are getting stronger over time,
that's the results of progressive.
Yeah, you're automatically lifting more weights over time. That is progressive overload. So say the first week you started working out and you did back squats for 3 sets of 10 at 95 pounds. And then a year later, you were still doing 3 sets of 10, but you have gotten stronger to, you were doing 135 pounds for 3 sets of 10 because you gotten stronger. That is progressive overload. You are doing more volume. You progressively overloaded your body from when you started working out to the current point in time. Now, if you were to continue to do the same thing over and over again, your body's going to get really good at that, and your progress and results are going to diminish over time.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it. If you are comfortable and you feel good doing the same amount, but if your goal is to get stronger and lift more, then you have to progressive overload.
Yeah, you have to kind of change a little bit of what you're doing, and kind of different ways that you can progressive overload. Instead of just adding weight to the bar, which is great, is changing your rep scheme. Being able to add volume in different ways. So if you do 3 sets of 10, maybe you go to 5 sets of 5. Which yes is less reps, but it's completely different stimulus for your body. You're going to be lifting heavier weights, which is overloading the body. Now your overall volume might be a little bit lower, but it's a completely different stimulus that your body is receiving. And it's a new skill that you're going to have to learn.
Because lifting at a lower rep scheme for heavier weights, even if you're just doing 25 overall reps opposed to the 30, you're probably going to be lifting more weight altogether.
Yeah,
because you can lift heavier weight for 5 reps than you can for 10.
Yeah, your percentage you're going to be lifting at should be significantly higher. Now, the effort that you are going to be putting in is going to be approximately the same. Like if you're judging based off of the RPE scale, your rate of perceived exertion, you're probably going to get to where there's 2 or 3 reps left in the tank. Your exertion level is probably going to be pretty similar, but the intensity or like the amount of weight lifted is going to be higher in the lower rep scheme, which is going to elicit a different response from your muscles.
Yeah, it's going to feel different. The exertion's going to feel different. It'll be hard to compare as in which one's more difficult, just because when you're lifting in that higher rep range, it becomes, I don't want to say cardio,
almost mental at that point.
Yeah, you get to that 8th rep and your rate gets up a lot higher. Not a lot higher, but it feels like you're working a lot harder because you're taking a much longer time to finish your.
That's one of the reasons why. So you can build muscle in a high rep range, but it is harder. I will say that because you have to push, like it might feel bad, but your body potentially can do 10 more reps at that weight, even though it feels bad. So you have to, I don't want to say push yourself past your limit. Like I said, that's why I said it's almost like a harder mental game when you're doing high reps than it is low reps, because you want to stop and, put the bar down or, dumbbell, set the dumbbell down or whatever. But in order to get, similar results of the strength and muscle, you have to get to that point where you're almost, hitting failure, 2 to 3 reps shy of failure to get that same response.
And this is where that muscular endurance is going to come in. This is how you're going to train your muscles to do. And it's really handy for a lot of CrossFit style stuff because CrossFit, a lot of it is lifting moderate weight a lot of times quickly.
For sure. Yeah. Like you're not going to get your top end strength from that, but you're going to get pretty good muscular endurance, and you can for sure get definitely some muscular hypertrophy where your muscles grow. Now, if you're doing too much of that all the time, you're going to be limited on how much muscle mass you can build. So that might be fine with some people, but if that is your goal and spending your time in the higher rep ranges, it might be worth it to go and dabble in the lower rep ranges every now and again.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably easier to get that hypertrophy from this if you're a newer lifter.
Oh yeah, if you're a newer lifter, you're gonna you're gonna gain muscle in whatever rep range you do. Like just starting working out, even with a terrible program and subpar nutrition, just starting to work out with no weightlifting experience whatsoever, you're gonna gain muscle.
Which is why a lot of CrossFitters, when they start, if they don't have experience weightlifting, and they start CrossFitting and doing Metcons, because CrossFit isn't the ideal way to build muscle.
Yeah, if your number one goal is to build muscle, CrossFit
probably not at the top of the.
Yeah, maybe not at the very top of the list. You can, but like Jade's saying, it's definitely easier when you're a newbie.
Yeah, you're gonna make a lot of gains as far as strength and muscular endurance. When I started CrossFit, I had hardly any experience in strength training, and I got strong fast just doing CrossFit.
Yeah. Now, you also have very good genetics for building muscle, but nonetheless, most people who do, it just may not be at the same pace as you, but anyone who just picks up weightlifting or, strength training in general from doing nothing is going to see rapid results.
Compared with somebody who's experienced in lifting and training.
Yeah, assuming that their form is appropriate, because like I said, nutrition won't matter as much. If you're a newbie, you're still going to make gains, but as long as your form is still appropriate and within the parameters of the standards, I think you'll make pretty good gains.
Yeah.
Another way to progressive overload is by changing your tempo or rep tempo. Especially in CrossFit, we don't do a lot of tempo training. It's kind of get the movement done, a lot of times as quick as it can. And unfortunately, sometimes it's at the disregard of any movement standards, events. You're just trying to get it done, which every now and again can be beneficial if your form stays, like I said, within the standard and stays, almost perfect. Performing reps fast and quick, and a lot of them can be good, but it's also really good to go the complete opposite and slow your reps down a lot and go really slow on your reps. Because if anybody's ever done tempo squats or really tempo anything where you're taking a 4-second lowering down, a 2-second pause, and a 4-second raising the bar or raising your body, that's really terrible.
Yeah, I would go ahead and say that it's probably in that same mental thing as the high rep range. I almost will exclusively not do tempo stuff because it's terrible. I know it's really beneficial, and I can always feel it. I'm different kinds of sore, which I don't know if you all know this, but just because you're sore after workout doesn't mean it's good or bad. But it's different because I don't do tempo stuff very often. Anytime I do tempo stuff, so I am so sore because I hardly ever do it and I hate it. Every second of it, I hate it. I've almost quit. Anytime I decide to do something tempo, I almost always get to the last set and think, maybe I don't need to do this. I think I've done enough.
Well, let's talk about the benefits of tempo before we start trashing on it, because especially for
trashing on it. I'm just saying I hate it.
Yeah, that's fair. Got to separate the two. Especially for CrossFitters who do a lot of concentric loading, where there's not a lot of eccentric loading. Eccentric is the lowering down. And the best example I can give is those of you that do CrossFit is a wall ball or a light thruster, where you throw the ball up and it's coming down, you catch it, and you just take it to the bottom of the squat and just bounce out of the bottom and come right back up. You didn't control the squat at all, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. It's not a highly loaded movement, so you can get away with that. But doing that repetitively over and over again, let's say in a workout that's got 100 wall balls, and you do that, I don't know, once or twice a month at, 12, 15, 30 times a year. That's a lot of repetitions on your muscles, on your tendons, I should say, to take a beating, because if you're not controlling the weight down, all of that force has to go somewhere. And if it's not on your muscles from controlling it down, it gets shifted to your tendons. And that's where you can kind of get some inflammation in your knees. A lot of times people talk about their knees or their shoulders and stuff.
This is really important in pull-ups, like in gymnastics.
Yeah. For those of you doing kipping or butterfly pull-ups.
Not controlling yourself down is one of the worst things you can do, especially if your muscles are not your muscles and your joints are not accustomed to that sort of volume.
Yeah.
So that's why they always recommend here that you can do a certain amount of strict pull-ups before you start butterflying and kipping, because those movements, that kipping and butterflying, while it's very useful for CrossFit because we're trying to do stuff real fast, it's really hard on your joints if they're not conditioned for that much volume.
Yeah, if your muscles if you don't have the strength to control your body, and then you start adding momentum up on a pull-up bar, you got to think, pulling yourself up, but you don't have the strength, your body's just going to fall down. And if you're not controlling your body coming down, just like in the wall ball, all of that force has to go somewhere, and it's going to go to the shoulder girdle, up at the joint to the shoulder, all those muscles around the shoulder. And that's where people start to get injuries in that, the bicep tendon in their shoulder, back of their shoulder, up in their neck. So
I digress. Back to what you were saying about the concentric. It's basically the negative.
Like eccentric, yes.
Yeah, eccentric, sorry. It's basically the negative of a movement.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the down, the part, not saying it doesn't take strength to go down, but the negative of a wall ball, the negative of a thruster.
Yep. The lowering portion. You can think of that in a squat, lowering down, in a bench press, lowering down, in a pull-up. You pull yourself over the bar, lowering yourself down. A deadlift, you pick up the bar, setting the bar back down. That is the eccentric part of the movement. And there's some research out there that's where the most muscle damage occurs. That's where you'll get a lot of the soreness from. And not saying muscle damage is the number one predictor of building muscle, but it is one of the factors. Now, obviously, if you get sore and you're sore for 3 days, you probably overtrained. But you want a little bit of soreness, not all the time, but you want a little bit of soreness and allow yourself time to recover. That's where you're building a lot of muscle. So building muscle in all of your ranges of motion, the eccentric lowering down, the concentric building up, that's just going to make you a stronger, more resilient human being. If you only have strength in the concentric and not the eccentric, you're missing out on a lot of muscle, a lot of just potential gains left on the table.
Yeah, because different parts of your muscle have to work. And for eccentric and concentric. And if you think about lifestyle and you think about some of the things that we're training toward in our lifestyle, not to do with athletics or any kind of fitness related things, it's just living, the process of just squatting down to the ground to get something, or if you trip and fall, some of those movements trains different part of the muscles. The muscles performing different functions whenever you're saving yourself from falling on the ground.
Yeah. Well, and kind of what we're talking about, like injury prevention. The eccentric is very important injury prevention, especially in athletes like sprinters, athletes that take off running at a very high speed. The majority of the time that hamstrings get injured in athletes is not when the leg is swinging forward. It is when the leg is swinging backwards, and that's kind of that eccentric motion when the muscle is going back. So, of the quad, I should say, but the hamstring nonetheless. But training, that is just one example of why training the eccentric is very important. If you're an athlete on a GHD machine, doing the Nordic hamstring curls where you start on your knees and lower yourself down as slow as you can. You've probably seen this on the ground. where you have a friend or hold your feet on the ground, you're on your knees, and you're trying to lower yourself down to your chest as slow as you can. That really sucks. Those really hurt a lot. It feels like your hamstring is just balling up. Yeah. But those are probably one of the most beneficial things you can do for hamstring strain, hamstring tear prevention. So, talking more on progressive overloads, rep changes, tempo changes. You can also range of motion changes. For example, when you start squatting, you're brand new to lifting. You squat down, you break parallel, and then you stop there and you come back up. Great. Okay. A year later, you're lifting the same weight. Let's say 95 pounds, for example. You're doing 3 sets of 10 for 95 pounds a year ago. But now you're squatting with your butt all the way down on your calves, full depth, hips way below the top of your knee, ass to grass, and standing back up. You are a stronger human being because you are lifting in a bigger range of motion. You have strength in a bigger range of motion.
You're also a more mobile human being,
yeah.
Which is very, very important for strength. Mobility is very important.
And injury prevention. That's another way. Injury prevention happens when your body's not prepared for something. And if you go to do something and your shoulder joint or hip joint gets pushed past the limits that you have for it, well, that's when
big tears.
Yep, that's when there's more likely to be an injury happening. So whether that's in a squat, being able to squat lower, or in a deadlift, maybe you're standing on some plates and pulling from a deficit, or on pull-ups, you're pulling higher. Maybe you're doing the same amount of reps. You were getting your shin over the bar, and now you're pulling your chest all the way to the bar in a straight pull-up, a greater range of motion.
Do you know why some powerlifters train in a lesser range of motion?
That would be because if you've ever watched powerlifting not a lot, but sometimes they can get the bar up and they get it to their knee, and then once they get to their knee, they have trouble locking out.
Like a deadlift?
So they have trouble locking out. So they are weaker in the top portion of the deadlifts. So you might see those athletes set up blocks and start the bar at their knee, the deadlift from their knee up.
So they can just target that weakness.
Mm-hmm. So they can target that weakness in the lift. So same thing for bench press. If some people on bench press, they'll add blocks to their chest because they can go down and they can get the bar slightly off their chest and they hit a sticking point halfway up. Well, it's because they're weak from that halfway point on the way up. So they'll put blocks on their chest and they'll go down halfway or so and then press up from there.
So if that's your limiting factor, that space right there, if you train from that range of motion, then you can raise your overall.
Yeah, in theory, yeah.
Okay.
In theory, yeah, that's the theory behind it. And that's why you see people, like yourself, when you do Romanian deadlifts, okay? That's why you stand on a plate or stand on blocks, because when you go down, you can go all the way to the ground and it still might be challenging. So you have to put your feet on something.
Is that a flexibility thing, y'all?
Well, flexibility, mobility, you have the flexibility. So if you have the flexibility, increasing the range of motion adds mobility to that, building strength in that range of motion.
So that's a form of progressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. Because,
I never thought
getting stronger in a wider range of motion just makes you overall stronger. There's potential for new muscle growth because, that's something, it's another skill. It's treated as a skill. It's something new you're learning that your body has to adapt to. And as it adapts, it grows stronger, it grows more resilient, and therefore, in this case, builds more muscle.
That makes sense.
So those are just 3 ways, and I'm sure there's even more that we could talk about on progressive overload, but that's just kind of as you're in the gym thinking about, what you're doing, and if you're, kind of stuck or man, I'm not feeling myself getting any stronger, what are some ways that I can, tinker with my programming or tinker with my reps, how I do things to maybe break through a plateau, maybe look at your tempo, maybe look at your range of motion, look at your rep scheme. Are you always doing the same reps the entire time, the same tempo, lower and down, the same range of motion? There's a way you can increase range of motion. There's a way you can get stronger in a different range of motions. Just looking at your training as a whole and not getting stuck in the same line of training for every time you go in the gym.
Makes things more interesting too. Yeah, some people get really comfortable with the strength that they are. They don't necessarily care about getting stronger. They just want to maintain. But it can get boring if you're just doing the same thing. It can give you a little bit of new motivation if you just change it up a little bit, and you'll benefit from it.
Yeah. And so now we're going to move on to a little bit different topic. And I don't remember if this is one someone asked or maybe we were talking about it, but the topic is basically genetics and being overweight. Okay. Oh, you'll hear sometimes it discussed like people using their genetics as a reason why they are overweight. While there is some merit behind that, percentage of that makes up why that person is overweight is not nearly as high as the percentage of lifestyle factors and self-discipline and other factors that go into why that person is, So I would say I did a little bit on this, like basing it on, there can be, up to like 10 to 20 pounds of like leeway, given a person's height and weight as to genetic factors on fat gain, as there can be like 50 to 100 pounds of difference based on lifestyle factors and stuff.
Genetics affect a lot of things, and a lot of ways that we don't even really understand. Scientists study it all the time, but there's so many things that genetics, and they figure new stuff out all the time. But what they have determined about genetics is, even though that it can affect where you store muscle, your hormones even, you can affect these same things with lifestyle changes that are going to affect your overall weight and body composition more so than your genetics. So you can beat your genetics, unless you have some sort of genetic disorder or disease, which is about 1% of people, that's really preventing you from making a big change.
Yeah, it is a very low percentage. You can get her out. I'll talk about this a little bit more. And I understand kind of where people might come from when they see this. Like, just for as an example, you might see a family that that the entire family might be overweight or a little bit bigger, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is genetics. One person in the family, like the lineage, so one generation of family, if they're used to eating out all the time and cooking unhealthy foods, well, their offspring is going to learn those similar habits, and unless prompted to make a change, or unless they make a change, they're probably going to follow that same path of making those same lifestyle choices as they grow up and get older. They'll probably make the same choices of eating out, all of the things. Not to say that those things are necessarily bad or wrong, because we eat out, once a week or something like that. But being unaware of the downstream effects of these things and not being aware of what they can lead to, that's where you can see this happen.
Yeah,
passed down through the generations.
Well, and a lot of people will say they confuse genetics with lifestyle, like your family. Maybe you come from a family that eats out a lot or uses a lot of highly processed foods when they're cooking. That's a family lifestyle factor. You may come from a family that does this,
Mm-hmm.
and it might not have much to do with genetics. It wasn't passed down through your blood. You weren't necessarily born with the disposition of holding extra weight, so on and so forth. That's why it's really important as parents, whenever you have kids, to set good examples, because your kids are not gonna, they'll sometimes do what you tell them to do, but they're usually gonna do what you do.
Yeah.
So
and honestly, a lot of times, I don't want to take the blame from them, but a lot of times it's not all on them. It is a lack of education, and we don't learn these things, I would say, really growing up through school or anything. We don't learn the effects of food and what's in food and how food affects our body. And especially with like processed food, that those foods are genetically engineered, genetically modified to make us want to eat more. So I was doing some research today, I was just curious. I was talking with one of my clients. Okay. The most satiating food there is a plain baked potato. Just one plain baked potato, nothing on it, no sour cream, no salt, pepper, nothing like that, no butter. Now, obviously, that doesn't sound very appetizing. No. But in a 7.75 ounce bag of chips, there are 2 potatoes in there, but also there's added oils, seasonings, all kinds of stuff in there. in no world am I ever going to sit down and eat 2 plain baked potatoes. They're just plain. Actually, I think they were boiled potatoes, so they don't even get any good flavor, just boiled. But I could for sure sit down and smash a 7.75 ounce bag of chips
Or 2
of Doritos, or maybe even 2.
Yeah.
You know, they make pound bag chips. There's like 4 or 5 pounds of potatoes in a 1 pound bag of chips, a 16-ounce bag of chips.
And actually, if you go to Sam's Club, you can get it cheaper.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. We don't need to know that. They don't need to know that. But that's just how much, you know, these foods are engineered and kind of trick our receptors in our brain to just continuous mindless eating of these foods. So that was just like one example of that. But see, without education, the average person probably doesn't know this. And that's what I wanted to say. Like, it's not necessarily all on that person that, you know, maybe they're overweight. Sorry, guys, that's Marge joining us on the podcast. If you didn't know, I think she was on 2 times ago. She's a little bit older now. She got a voice.
She's got hair.
She got hair.
Yeah.
Just looking around, got all the new things. But like I was saying, it's not necessarily all on the person because they just weren't aware. They didn't know. Now there is a piece of like, action, like taking action yourself, like realizing that maybe the habits you are indulging in are not the most healthy habits for you, for your family, you know, for those that you love around you. And then that's where the self-research can come in. This is where maybe you have to, on your own, go out of your way or use some of your spare time to, you know, research
And that's
these things.
not only research, but I was just thinking as you were talking about that some of this also, and not making more excuses, but the convenience factor. People with families are short on time, and it's a lot easier to go for some of those convenience foods. And honestly, fast food has gotten very expensive now, but convenience foods, it seems cheaper. A lot of times if you don't really know how to meal prep, if you don't have experience, because you can do some very simple meal prepping.
Oh, I'm the most simplest meal prepper.
He sure is. You can do that for very, very inexpensive. People think that it's expensive to meal prep nutrient-dense food. It's not if you know what you're doing, but that goes back to the education thing. If you don't know, then you just think, you see all these posts on social media, just like elaborately prepared foods with it doesn't have to be like that. No. And a lot of people think, well, it's so expensive to eat healthy. It's really not, but it can be very cheap
if you make
and convenient. It can be very cheap and convenient to eat unhealthy things on the other side of the coin. And a lot of people will use that as an excuse for some of their unhealthy vices, is that it's just too expensive to eat healthy.
Yeah. And, you know, for example, if you set out the time and plan ahead.
And you'll have to sacrifice some of your time.
Yeah, for sure. But I just think, like, now obviously we've been doing it for a while, so I'm sure it's not as challenging for us, but we set aside, 3 hours on either Saturday or Sunday, depending on our schedule, and I'll usually cook the meat on the grill. You'll usually cook the carb sources and or veggies, and kind of just teamwork it out, and it's usually done within about 3 hours.
And honestly, if Cody had his way, it would be probably an hour. I'm the extra one when it comes to meal prep. Like I want there to be pancakes, protein pancakes in the fridge or freezer available for quick breakfast. I'm the one that wants to make sure there's muffins, protein muffins. I'm the one that does the elaborately prepared mixed roasted vegetables, because I love vegetables and they're pretty and delicious. If it were up to Cody, we would just eat chicken and rice and carrots every week for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, I did that for a while. Grill some boneless skinless chicken thighs or some rice in a pressure cooker, and you could have raw carrots or you could have roasted carrots. One ways takes 30 minutes less than the other. That's an hour or less right there that you just took to meal prep a whole week's worth of meals. Yep. That's just an example of how you could, if you could really simplify and shop wholesale stores when you're doing that stuff. You could buy a 20-pound bag of rice from Sam's Club for what, $15, $20?
It's about $20. Or you can buy.
And a 20-pound bag of rice is going to take you a while to get through.
Ultimately 5 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
If you eat it all the time.
Yeah.
And then you can buy frozen vegetables. Frozen vegetables have just as much nutrients as fresh vegetables.
Yes. And then, the people that say, oh, they're bland, I don't like fresh vegetables.
Put salt and pepper on.
Exactly. Salt and pepper, seasoning, melt some butter.
Salsa. Put some salsa on them.
Yeah, melt some cheese on them, stuff like that. Just seasonings and little things like that go a long way when it comes to stuff like certain foods.
And if you just really don't have time to cook, I know that people like to bash on the Sam's Club rotisserie chickens because of the sodium. Well, we don't eat out that often, so we have a little bit of wiggle room for sodium. Those things are delicious, and they are $5, and one person can eat a rotisserie chicken for probably 3 meals.
Anyway, I think that kind of covers genetics and being overweight. We are going to cover next, not the same, but along the same line of thinking, what to do with stubborn areas of fat on your body. Now, this can be where genetics do play a little bit of a role, because genetics do kind of determine where your body holds majority of fat.
Also gender.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Now, you will see similarities between males and females. Like males tend to hold most of their fat, like their last little bit of fat, or a lot of the fat on their love handles, their low back, their outer lower back is where they tend to hold that. Females, a lot in their like lower body, their hips,
their butt, their legs.
Thighs.
Yep. Because of hormones, because we carry babies and we make milk and all of those fun things that come with being a female.
All right. But in regards to the question at hand, what do you do about those stubborn areas? Can you target those areas? Can you lose fat from certain areas? Short answer is no. Unfortunately, you cannot with natural remedies. You cannot really do that with natural remedies. Now, there are other remedies that I'm sure you could. We're not going to get into those today.
You talk about surgery and stuff?
That and, like peptides,
well,
stuff like that.
We don't know that those work anyway.
Well,
I mean, science.
Well,
we'll talk about that.
Stuff about that.
We'll
That'll
talk
be
about
another
that
podcast. But in short, no, you cannot target specific areas of fat. But I will say probably the best way to target that area, quote unquote target, is by getting those muscles in that area stronger. Because a stronger muscle, majority of the time, is a bigger muscle, which a bigger muscle can help you, quote unquote, tone that area of the body.
And let's talk about how much more calories you burn just existing when you have a lot of muscle in your body.
Oh yeah. There's a math formula for that, but I would even say, I think the math formula is like 50 calories a day or something with like 10 extra pounds of muscle, but I don't think that's an accurate representation. I think it's more than that. Just because the other factors it takes to build all that musle, they play a role
and to maintain that muscle.
Yeah.
We could probably use an entire podcast talking about the benefits of muscle mass.
Oh yeah. I think we've talked about it before, but I don't know if we've talked about a full podcast of that. Yes. Like Jade was saying, building more muscle. If you put your focus on building more muscle in that area of fat, that stubborn area of fat, you are going to build muscle in that area, which is going to make that area look better. But it's also going to burn more calories just by having more muscle mass at that area, if that makes sense. Because more muscle you have in your body, it takes a lot of energy to maintain that muscle mass. The more energy it takes to maintain, that means the more calories you're burning, the more food calories you need to eat in order to maintain that, maintain that muscle mass. Also to build it, you need to have a slight excess of calories to build the muscle mass, to build more muscle in general. Eating more to build more is key. So overall, building more muscle burns more calories. Burning more calories gets rid of more fat, which is the whole goal of if we're trying to get rid of stubborn areas of fat.
And honestly, the more muscle you have on your body, the better you're going to look.
Absolutely.
At higher weights, at higher fat percentages, people who have more muscle are going to look better.
Yeah, they just look like they have a lower body fat percentage than they're at.
Yeah, they're not as soft looking.
Having more muscle shapes your body into I guess you could say, a more attractive bodily shape, would you say?
If you're not interested in gaining muscle and you still want to lose those stubborn areas of fat that are just hanging out, then you just have to lose more fat, unfortunately. And that's really hard. It gets really hard to lose those very lower percentages because your body gets to a point where if you lose too much fat and you just have a little bit left, it tries to conserve the fat.
Yeah, your body's going to revolt at some point because
We need that fat in our body.
evolutionary speaking, our bodies are not meant to get that low of body fat. Like women, I'd venture to say that the low end of healthy is like 18 to 20% is the low end
For maintaining.
Yeah, and if someone I would never tell a female to try and maintain that low. Probably females are probably better off maintaining around 24%. I would say is probably a healthier ground to maintain, because that's going to allow you more flexibility, more metabolic flexibility. It's going to allow you to eat more food. It's going to allow you to build more muscle. And then on the other side, on males, you're looking at probably in the 12 to 15%. I even say around 14 to 15% is probably the ideal percentage that you would want to hang out at, because any lower than that, again, that's where hormones start to fluctuate and where you can start to feel kind of bad just in day to day if you're not eating enough food to provide your body energy. And that's what then you kind of get brain fog, and you kind of all these other things start to happen because of your hormone fluctuations. Your hunger signals, your leptin and your ghrelin start to get all jacked up. Your testosterone can lower in males. The sex drive, all of that stuff gets thrown through loop if you get too low of a body fat percentage, and especially hang out there for an extended period of time.
Your sleep, I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, I did not say that. But and then we've talked about sleep on here before. When your sleep gets jacked up, that affects everything else too.
So it becomes a terrible loop of just bad things.
Yeah, and we could talk about examples of sleep all the time. Like for us, example, Margaret's been fighting ear infection the last week, and one night she got up at 10, 12, 2, 4, and 5, and on those days, those are now this is a different topic, but those are the days that I would tell someone to probably not work out.
Yep.
There's no reason to work out. You're not going to get anything from that workout, because even if you do go hard and crush a workout, your body is just going to not like that. It's going to take exponentially longer to recover. So maybe instead of working out the next day, your body's going to take 4 days to work out. Or I think this is what happened to me at one point. I worked out on very little sleep, and then did a whole bunch of stuff later on that day. And then that night or the next day, I ended up with a 103-degree fever, and my body was just like revolting against me because I had done so much, tried to do too much. So in the same sense, that's
when you don't get enough rest, your body does not prioritize muscle growth or muscle maintenance. It doesn't prioritize a lot of things, which is probably why you got that fever, is because your immune system becomes weakened whenever you don't get enough rest and you do too much. So there's really not any benefit to most exercise on days that you are severely sleep deprived. If you've had 3 or 4 hours of sleep, you definitely don't want to do a high intensity workout. Maybe go for a walk if you need to do something.
Get outside, get some sunlight. Vitamin D is going to help you sleep. But, going back to the body fat percentage, spending all your time in a too low of a body fat percentage, your immune system is also compromised when you're that low of a body fat percentage. It's not a completely different type of feeling from being underslept. Fatigue is still very similar.
This goes into a completely different topic too, but if you try to maintain a calorie intake that's too low, our bodies are very adaptable. And this is where we get into, people talk about ruining your metabolism. It's not like that, but this is kind of what they're talking about when they mention ruining your metabolism. Your body will learn to function at the same level on less calories, which is why you'll see somebody will start running and they'll lose a lot of weight. And then over time, as their body gets better at running, they'll continue to get better at running, but that weight loss kind of slows down and then plateaus because your body becomes really good at existing.
And then if you stay there for even longer, the complete opposite is going to happen. You are going to
start gaining weight.
You're going to start gaining fat, especially if you're not weight training. Your body's going to be so well adapted to, running and eating low amounts of calories that that's going to become its new normal. And then anytime you deviate from that, go over your calories, you hear people all the time say, oh, I went on vacation, or I, look at a cheeseburger and I gained weight. Well,
Well, it'll actually get to the point where you might have to eat less doing the same amount to maintain your weight.
Yeah. And this is a scenario I wouldn't, if someone came to me, and some of my clients have heard this, if someone came to me and they're eating very low calories and they want to lose weight, this is where I tell them they need to eat more calories. We need to build up the metabolism to get their maintenance at a higher calorie intake. So what that looks like, if someone comes to me and they're eating 12,000 calories a day, they want to lose weight, well, I'd like to get them their maintenance. 1,200, not 12,000. Yeah. 1,200 calories, and they want to lose weight. Well, then I'm going to explain to them, hey, this is going to take multiple months through this process, but in the end, it is going to benefit you, and you're going to be so much happier in the long run. We need to get your calories up to 2,000 or 2,500. Some depends on the person. Build your calories up to where you're eating that much for a significant amount of time, and then we can start lowering your calories, and then you're losing weight eating 2,000 calories, 1,800 calories, versus going from 1,200, having to go down to 900, which is unreasonable and unrealistic, and losing weight. You're eating double that and losing weight. And
this is where patience really comes into play. It's so beneficial.
Reverse dieting
is so beneficial for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. And we could go into, that could be a whole nother podcast topic if you'd like, so leave comments on YouTube or respond to us on Instagram and tell us you liked it. Give us ideas on what kind of topics you'd like to hear from us going forward. I think we're going to wrap this show up here. Season 3, episode 1, hopefully kicked off with some good topics. Hopefully gave you some good information. We'll be back next month on the BFIT Blueprint in February. Hopefully you guys had a great holiday season. We're looking forward to the new year, kicking off 2026 the right way. And we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the BFIT Blueprint podcast. If you would, please subscribe, like, comment, and share on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, or whichever platform it is that you listen to the BFIT Blueprint podcast.